Hey, what's up everybody? It's Katie from Brio Travel, where it's all about traveling with intention and connecting to the world. I craft meaningful and memorable trips that honor responsible travel, but to even begin to do that, we have to take it all the way back to the start. So this is going to be part of a series of videos called Back to Basics, where we're going to go and take a look at some of the important details that often get overlooked in the excitement of kind of the overall picture of a trip, and really get to know a country and some of the things that are really important to know before you go to be able to really dive in deep and connect with the country as soon as you get there. So where are we going to talk about today? I just booked a trip for a client to Southern Africa. That's going to be this like epic trip around the whole region and up into East Africa, and it got me really excited about Africa. So drum roll please. We're going to talk about Uganda. Uganda is in East Africa and it's located west of Kenya and north of Rwanda and Tanzania. It's probably most known for the mountain gorillas. It is one of 3 countries in the entire world that you can go see the mountain gorillas in real life in their natural habitat. You can also see them in Rwanda and the DRC, the Democratic Republic of the Congo. But the DRC has some political things, some geopolitical things that make it not always the most stable country. And Rwanda, the permit is like twice the price to go see the gorillas. And so I think Uganda is an excellent choice for the gorillas, but just also because of everything else it has to offer. They're doing some really great things for conservation efforts with the gorillas and wildlife in general, which is really, really interesting to learn about and really, really cool to see in real life. Uganda is a perfect country to visit, whether it's your 500th time in Africa or your first time. Okay, so let's go. The first thing you're going to want to know is what language do they speak. One of the things that makes Uganda so approachable is the fact that one of their official languages is English. Colonialism, am I right? Anyway, I think it can be easy to take for granted that as a native English speaker that we can just rock up into many countries and speak English and be able to effectively communicate with the locals there. But I have been to places where that isn't the case, and it is a hilarious adventure and game of charades, but it can also be really frustrating and confusing, and you just feel lost and exhausted all the time trying to figure stuff out. And so it's important to know what you're getting yourself into. But again, Uganda is English and their other national language is Swahili. So all the signs and everything will be written in English. In the day-to-day, people are going to talk to each other generally in their native language. There's different languages in different regions, one of the biggest ones being Uganda. I think it's really fun and also respectful to learn how to say at least hello and thank you in whatever language of the place that I am. In Uganda, in every region it's going to be different. So if you're traveling from central to east to west to south to north, it's going to change, and sometimes those people don't speak the other regional language or dialect, so you'll have to learn a few different ones if you do. But it's also a great way to start talking to people and like a conversation starter. So they'll be like, oh, well, this is how you say it in my language. Anyway, the national language is English and Swahili. The next thing we're going to talk about is drinking water and whether or not it's safe to drink from the tap. In Uganda, it is not. So whenever it's not safe to drink from the tap, you also have to be really cognizant of ice and of salads, vegetables and fruits where you're getting them raw, where they're washing it with the water, because that also makes a difference. I personally brush my teeth with the water and have always been fine, knock on wood. But make sure you're double and triple checking with your guide and at every single accommodation that you go to. It's also good to know this before you get there so you can prepare and bring some water treatment stuff so you're not having to use as many bottles of water, as well as medicine in case you end up getting sick from the water. And that'll be something that you talk to your doctor with beforehand, which is why it's important to know before you get there. The next thing that you want to know is what kind of outlet do they have. Obviously, we are all very connected to our phones and electronics, and while we're probably not going to get a great Wi-Fi signal, you're gonna wanna charge things to take pictures with. And so they use type G plugs, which means nothing to me, but it's these guys, the similar ones, or the same ones from Great Britain. I have a thing like this that has all of them in one, which is great. That's really nice. Or I also have a set of like individual ones so it can fit in smaller spaces as well. This is important to know beforehand because if you have connections, if you're going to want to charge things at the airport and they've got different plugs, make sure you look up what outlet they are going to have in that specific airport that you're stopping in, as well as making sure to put the right ones in your carry-on instead of your check bag, because it still does you no good if it's sitting under the plane. Alright, so let's talk money. We're going to talk currency, credit cards, and tipping. The currency that they use is the Ugandan shilling, and at the time of recording, it's $1 to 3,700 shillings, more or less. So I like to, if I'm doing easy math in my head, I like to round up, so then I'm pleasantly surprised when it's cheaper than what I had calculated in my head. For credit cards, if you're paying for safaris and guided tours, that is all paid for in advance, and it depends on the company whether or not they take credit card payments or they need a bank transfer. But when you're in country, it is best to have cash on hand. As far as tipping goes, it is not customary to tip at restaurants, but just round up. A lot of the times your meals are included with safaris and stuff, so you won't be eating out a ton, but it is good to know before and after your safari. You definitely want to tip your safari guide and your hotel staff. So hotels are usually $5 per day per person, and a lot of times there's a little box for tips in the reception or somewhere in the hotel. Otherwise, you can just leave it in the room. And for your safari guide, $10 to $20 per person per day to be paid at the end of the trip. And I do that in local currency. Hey, so I was editing the video and realized that I forgot some really important stuff. So just popping in here to fill it in. So sometimes your guide and your driver are different people. Mine was not, which is why I wasn't thinking about it. But if it's different, then you also want to make sure to tip your driver for the whole trip and your guide for the whole trip. Drivers, I would suggest between $5 and $10 per person per day. If your guide is your driver, I do for sure tend to tip on the higher end of the suggested spectrum per day because it's hard to drive and to be driving around with on dirt roads and in weather. Also, when you go on your specific tracks, you're gonna have trackers, so specifically chimps and gorillas and stuff, the very special ones, there's gonna be trackers, and for certain animals there's also gonna be guards, and so there will be a different guide that's taking you on the track. There's gonna be the trackers and then sometimes the guards as well. I would say $5 to $10 each for each person, maybe $15 for the guide, and that's again per guest. Also, some people have porters that go with them, and so they carry their bags. If you've got a lot of bags, I suggest not taking with you more than you can carry, but also you do you. For porters, it's $15 to $20. And all of this is best in local currency. I know that it's hard because all of these things start to really add up over the course of a trip, and a trip that you've already paid a lot of money to go on. But you don't want to skimp on things like tips that really do affect people's lives, and they're doing exceptional work, and so it also goes back directly into the community, and it's helping put dollars in to continuing to protect animals and the wildlife there. So it's really important stuff, so please don't skimp on the tips. A few extra dollars does make a big difference to people, and knowing about it ahead of time, you can now work it into your budget beforehand, so you know going into it. Visa and vaccines. Only a handful of countries can travel to Uganda visa-free, and most of those are in the African continent, and you're probably not watching this video because you probably already know all of this. So to everybody else, you need a visa. Depending on the country you're from, there's a visa on arrival option, or you can get an e-visa ahead of time. And you can get this for just Uganda, or you can get an East Africa visa that allows you into, apparently I misspoke again. So the East Africa visa is for Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. My bad. Make sure that you are checking your government website for the most up-to-date information. You can also find links to all that stuff on my website. And if we work together on a trip, I will of course walk you through all of that and help you through all of the steps of that process. It is required to have a yellow fever vaccine before you go. And beyond that, there are also some recommended vaccines to get before you go. Again, you always want to check with your government for the most up-to-date information. Safety is a very important issue. Uganda is a very safe country. Just exercise all of the normal precautions that you would take whenever you're traveling, as far as like pickpockets and stuff like that goes. Make sure if you're on a motorbike taxi in Kampala that everything is very close to you. Like, don't keep your backpack on your back, keep your backpack on your front, and general precautions like that. Again, make sure that you are staying updated with your government's websites and their suggestions on safety, as obviously things can change, but Uganda is generally a very stable country. So you know all that information, but when should you actually go? If you watched my video on the best time to travel, then you'll know that the answer is, it depends. Dry season is December to February and June to August, and this is a really, really good time to see wildlife. The conditions are dry and really good for trekking, to see the mountain gorillas and the chimps, and the vegetation is pretty sparse, and so it's easier to spot the wildlife. But this also means that there's going to be higher prices and higher crowds. So make sure that you're applying for your permits well in advance if you're going during this time. If you go from March to May and September to October, you'll get the benefits of low season, so fewer crowds and lower prices. You'll also get a lovely green landscape, and you'll get to see lots of newborn animals, which is really adorable and fun. The downside of going during the wet season is that the rain can cause problems with the roads, since many of the roads are dirt roads. There's a danger of getting stuck, tire stuff, and since it is mountainous, literally not being able to go up and down the dirt roads because of the rain. And if the weather is bad enough, you could be caused to miss your gorilla trek. I went in October and I had no problems. You just have to bring a bunch of rain gear and be flexible to pivot your plans. We had to switch around a few days. It still wasn't too wet, and I really loved the benefit of just so few people being there. Uganda is located on the equator, and so the temps are going to stay the same more or less through the whole year. Uganda is currently still asking for a proof of vaccination upon entry into the country, and if you are not vaccinated, then you'll have to show proof of a negative PCR within the last 72 hours. This is being filmed at the beginning of February 2023, so if you're watching this at a different time, then make sure to double check. Again, you can find that information located on my website, and if we work together, you'll know by now that we'll go over all of that stuff before you go. So the last thing is which side of the road do they drive on, and because they're a former British colony, they drive on the left. So make sure that you look right. Well, whatever. Look both ways. You should always look both ways. But like, for real, for sure, definitely don't forget to look right. We're not going to talk today about responsible travel. That will be in a separate video, so make sure to stay tuned for that. For now, I just wanted to talk about the basics. While they're not as exciting as all of the cultural things and the animals and stuff, it really does make a big difference. Going in armed with this information, you just feel so much more confident. When you're going to a new place and a new culture, all of this information is a building block for the foundations of being a responsible traveler. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. That really helps me out, and subscribe to my channel. I put out new videos on the 1st and the 15th of every month. I also would love to hear from you. Is Uganda on your list? Did you know any of this stuff before? You'll be able to find all this information on my website. Make sure to head to travelbrio.com, and if you're interested in a trip to Uganda or anywhere else, all of this is going to be included in your pre-departure stuff. I'll make sure to walk you through all of it so you can feel comfortable and confident on your way to this beautiful, beautiful country. So thanks for hanging out with me, and as always, happy travels. Bye.